Anurag Maloo is an Indo-Asian startup innovation community architect, which I know is an incredible title. He's the regional manager for South and Central Asia with Techstars and Startup Weekends, and therefore responsible for the cultivation and sustained growth of vibrant startup ecosystems in a lot of countries in Asia. But today he's the host of the program because Anurag is working on his own podcast, and you'll hear his story in the next program. We decided to do an interview where he interviewed me. So that's what you're going to hear today. It's an unusual step for me, so I hope you enjoy it. It's a little bit of an insight into what it's like to be on the road for 9 years, be an empath, be working in the field of change innovation and global innovation, and I hope you enjoy it. You're listening to the Insight to Action podcast. My name is Dawna Jones, and my work involves organization and global leadership transformation. Here we go.
Today, I would like to know a little more about Dawna yourself. I think I'm glad that I got to connect with you. And thanks to Nicole that this connection happened. Already yesterday's conversation triggered me like really more curiosity to know you, what makes who you are. And I think, so if I have to ask you, Dawna, quickly, in like one word, how would you describe yourself in one word? And then in 5 words, and then maybe in one sentence.
Okay, let me see if I can do that. In a word, it would be focused, I would say, and deeply committed. So that's almost drifting into a sentence there. But I'm very passionate about helping humanity reconnect with the life support systems we have on this planet, so that we can make better lives and actually not destroy the living space that we're on. So, and I've been prepared to sacrifice anything to get, to be able to contribute somehow.
This is beautiful and very inspiring. I think, what does that sacrifice means to you in your life? I'm sure like over years you have seen a lot of people sacrificing. You must have done so many sacrifices. So what does this sacrifice means to you when you say that to help the humanity and help people achieve that consciousness?
Appreciate the question, because I think the biggest sacrifice I made in focusing and staying with my vision, which was to help expand the consciousness of people so they could see, develop more empathy, develop more compassion for each other, and more connection to nature and to all of the creatures that we share this planet with. I ended up being homeless for 9 years. And that ended about a little over a month and a half ago. What that means is that even though I could not find places where there was response to what I was saying and how I was saying it and everything else, and I tried everything. I tried so much different ways of coming at things. I stuck with it. And yeah, it was not easy, but it made me stronger. It made me more focused on actually continuing to do it. Every time I tried to take just go get a job, is because there's so much pressure from society and a lot of judgment, as you can imagine, because, you don't have the status of the big car, all these things that people go, oh, now you've made it. You've got all the external things. But what I had what I do have now is a strong internal sense of peace, that I'm completely aligned with who I am, what I believe, and what is important to me in the world today. So I'm glad I persevered.
So I think perseverance has been your biggest strength. That seems like that. You just mentioned about like societal expectations, and I personally have experienced it a lot. But how do you deal with it yourself? And what will be your one advice to people to deal with societal expectations?
Gosh, first of all, I have to say that I'm extremely sensitive. So, and I'm also very strong. And so what people do is they conclude if you're strong, you're not sensitive. That's the one thing that you have to deal with. And so when people come down hard on you for not going to get a job at the Walmart in North America, or just sort of do anything to survive, be desperate to survive. When they come down on you, it's remembering that you can be creative to survive. So I've written one whole book. I've contributed to another one, and then we've got another one that's going to be released next week. So that's a co-authorship. So I stayed with my creative sources, and I think that's stay with what's true to you, follow your heart with this. And yes, there is an old belief out there that says follow your heart, the money will follow. Well, it doesn't. It just doesn't. But what does happen is you're at least more aligned, and things show up in ways that you cannot control or manipulate. You just allow them and they show up. And our conversation today is like that. I mean, I go to Stockholm through a connection at UAE, and then I end up having a conversation with you. So it's just, wow, that's just incredible. So this is the beauty of it. You could not plan this.
Yeah, I think it's really about embracing it, right?
Yep.
And not escaping it. Thank you. Thanks
Absolutely.
for that.
And so when I hear young people now who are really struggling with, do I go to university? Do I get the job? Almost everybody that I know that has gone to university has come out and they're not doing what they went to university for. First of all, the university hasn't kept pace with what's going on in the world. So they graduate and their degrees are almost not relevant anymore, depending on what they took. So it's really about, yes, it's not to say don't go to university, but choose one that's progressive. Choose one of the the innovation schools that are part of the Global Responsible Leadership Initiative. But definitely stay true to yourself, because if you don't, then you end up with chronic illness and a whole mess of things that we see today in the world that's just not, it's optional.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for, I think, highlighting that. So, there are, in this life, I think I've seen when we are focused on doing certain things, when we are very idealistic and we have our own set of values, but what are those core values you will not ever compromise on? What really matters you to the most?
Wonderful question. For me, freedom is the autonomy, the freedom to be who I am is primo, and nothing gets sacrificed to that. So going, it ties back to your earlier question about judgment. It's brutal, absolutely brutal to receive judgment. At the same time, if I'm not free to be who I am, then I'm in a cage that I will die. It's just I've been through that process of trying to fit into society, and it never worked well. So I have freedom to be who I am, and if I make mistakes, they're my mistakes. I'm okay with that. It's part of the learning process. So, freedom is my absolute top priority. That's my core value. And then along with that would be truth and openness and integrity. So those that bundle is one that kind of dances around in moments, because if I'm open, it's the curiosity that goes with that takes me into places, and I'm talking to people that I'm scared of, but I'm really interested in who they are and what's underneath all, the toughness and the tats and I want to know who these gentle souls really are.
I want to know a little more, learn about your life as you wear so many hats, as an author, as someone who does so many podcasts and interviews people and help with human consciousness. How do you balance it out, doing all the great things and with your personal work life?
Well, for one, I do a terrible job of that, I suppose. But I've been a professional facilitator all my career, and I've been in management as well initially, but I found myself functioning better outside of organizations than inside. And so, as a professional facilitator, then I got into personal transformation for myself, but also just studying how people evolve as humans in their journey for becoming more of who they are. So it's at some level a soul evolution. Who am I really, and what can I learn from this world, and how can I use adversity to become more of who, more true to who I am in the most positive way, in the highest potential way. So, one of the things that takes you off track when you've got a fascination and a passion for personal and organizational and global transformation is creativity, because with creativity you're busy churning out all kinds of stuff. And so I have what I call Project ADD. This is way too much going on at once, and every now and again I have to kind of go stop and shrink it down into something I can, whoa, I'm losing it, so I need to pull it together and be more focused. But like, I have about 10 book projects. I'm exaggerating. There's probably only 5, but still there's too many, and it's great. On one level, it's fun because I can go over and poke in an area and move it. But to get something done, you actually have to focus and move it along. Balance for me is in nature. That's how I stay balanced. I have to be near nature. In our first conversation, we talked about my first trip to India when we were going to tiger reserve. So, that's a great example. Riding elephant back in the north, looking for tigers. I mean, how beautiful is that?
So true. It reminded me of your India trip. I want to actually go further down the lane in memory and really know your journey, how you started your career actually. What was your first job? And did you like it? And how did you move to different jobs and doing what you do right now? So where it all started, and what was that point of inception, like that inflection point where you decided to do what you do right now?
Yeah, let me think about that. Well, I started as a teacher. So that was the first thing I did. And I did that for about 4 or 5 years. And then I thought, I'm kind of repeating myself, and there's a limit to what I can do here. The system is sort of restricting me. So I moved out of that and started doing environmental education for the park system. And then I was getting itchy feet again. I'd already been around the world once, and I needed to do it again. So I went around the world when I was a teenager. My dad was a filmmaker, and we loaded everything up in a van and went around the world. So I was ready to go again, and basically pulled out of all of that and then headed off. And that's when I went to India. So worked at a couple of international conferences along the way. And then when I got back, I ended up being the director of communications for Forestry Canada, which is a federal agency. And that was sort of just a offshoot of the conference volunteer work I'd been doing. And then after about 6 years of that, I moved out to the West Coast. And at that point, I was married, and I just had a child, and the whole marriage fell apart. So I'm here in a place I don't know anybody. I certainly don't want to move back to where I was, because that would present a challenge with the parenting, and that wasn't fair to anybody. So I ended up just starting here, and I'd been trained in facilitation. I'd used it in my management approach. And so I basically started my company out of nowhere doing national policy consultation work. And it was nuts. I mean, there's no other word for it. You're a single parent. You've got a 1.5-year-old old child, and you're trying to do something with 40 subcontractors. It was crazy. But it was also rewarding. And so as long as I didn't kill myself by burning out repeatedly, then at least I had the freedom to show up for my daughter's, for the various things. Logistics are crazy too, but at least I had that freedom to be there for her and to work around it. So it all began there. And then after facilitating everything from policy in every sector, because I need diversity. Some people pick one area and they stick to it. I go crazy doing that. So I need more diversity. I need to see, it's kind of like, I ended up thinking about it as a human lab. When you go into the policy sector, how do people think? When you go into the nonprofit sector, how do people think? When you go into, and then arts and all these different areas, business and finance, and when you move into how do people work together? And so it became a fascinating journey of facilitating, but also just watching what's going on for humanity. And anyway, I delivered leadership change agent programs for about 11 years and sort of balanced off my practitioner with the going back to the educational roots. And along the way, I noticed that people had really good intentions about changing organizations, about changing, and they would move forward, and then they would just it just felt like a rollback. It just felt like I really want to do this, but I roll, and then they'd roll back. So the best they were getting was incremental results. They weren't doing any quantum jumps. And at the same time, I'm pretty aware of the fact that ecologically things were on a downward trajectory, not a good situation. And so I'm watching, I'm sort of sensing what's going on in the background with the environment and the ecology. And at the same time, it's tied to the economy, although that awareness was not is starting to become more appreciative, but certainly that time was not. And so I then realized, okay, my girl at this point was just almost finished high school. And I thought, all right, my job here is done. I've kept us going for that period of time. Now I need to do the bigger job and move my leadership to the next level. And that's when I started doing the global, what I thought was logical at the time. It proved not to be. But I really wanted to do the work of expanding consciousness and really helping business in particular, who have been very actively drawing down on the life support systems and basically ignoring the cost. I wanted to work with business in particular to be the leaders that they're quite capable of being. So to reverse that overdraft and turn it into a plus, into a deposit from an ecological and social health point of view. And so I started that in 2004, and I've been working on it ever since. Podcasting came about simply because my voice wasn't being heard and it was impossible. So I thought, well, I'll interview everybody else then and maybe they'll hear them. And that worked quite well. So yeah, I've been podcasting now for 10 years and the workshops are now coming in around the awareness, around mindset in particular. And of course, all that I've been through, all the homelessness, the 9 years of nomadic wandering, the people showing up, all of that contributes to what I take into the room, who I've become, and the support and the space I can hold for others to achieve their potential as well. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Wow, that's really, really inspiring. There are a lot of common dots which I can connect with in my life also, which you mentioned about starting your journey as a teacher. Same, I also started as a teacher. Environment and sustainability education is what I used to also teach. Nature, leadership, and I think facilitator. A lot of these things are also that's why I feel your energy is like this, because there are so many common threads on having a nomadic life to making an impact in the society, in the lives of people, helping people identifying their potential and empowering them. So this is beautiful. I'm glad I know you, but I think I want to also know that who is your hero? I'm sure you've been a teacher and doing magic to so many lives, but who is your hero, and have you ever met your hero or heroine? Not necessarily it has to be one person.
I don't know that I have a hero per se. I think it's because I take so much inspiration from the animal world. So I spend hours watching, or I used to as a kid spend hours watching birds do their thing and just how animals interact. I just have such an appreciation for their consciousness, their capacity to accurately read intention. A lion can go through a herd of wildebeest and they will do nothing because they know that he's not hungry. So there's just so many sophisticated communication skills that the animal kingdom has that we don't have as a species. We have not developed that yet. I mean, I think what we're trying to do is get tech to do it for us on a lot of ways, but we actually have the capacity to do more of that. So I'm not sure I have one, but I have people that I have a lot of respect for and have learned a lot from. But I couldn't even begin to do a list because it would be a long one.
No, I think this is great. So I look forward to your next book on moving from human consciousness to animal consciousness.
Wouldn't that be a hoot?
Would you like to write that book?
Well, at this point, I'll be glad if we can help decision makers in business move toward taking into the system into account, because right now we're watching a lot of decisions being made that are destroying the economy, but presumably they're in the interest of the economy. But unless you understand how everything is interconnected and interrelated, unless you bring an ecological mindset to it, you're going to make some really bad decisions today. And we're certainly seeing that in the political environments.
There are times in life when we feel super low and we have our own hard time. This is not always a very fancy, beautiful life. And how do you, who is your strongest pillar of support for you when you basically, who comes to rescue you when you are at your lowest? Who do you reach out to?
I do a lot of self regeneration. My daughter has been tremendously supportive, and I don't reach out to her for support because I know she's got a busy life and she's doing all that. And when I've tried, it's just been too much for her. So she's busy. But what I do is just spend some time, as much time as I can, in solitude and in nature, preferably, because that's recharging. And I also spend a lot of time, this may sound odd, but I also spend a lot of time with dogs and animals that are, I look after them, and they're hilarious. They're completely non-judgmental. They're unconditional in their affection, and they're very funny. They've got some really, and I'm a horse lover. I've been riding horses since I was 8. I haven't been riding steadily for the last 10 years, but being around horses is just my greatest love. So in the absence of that, though, it's the bush. I always just say I'm going to the bush. So I go hiking, and preferably alone, because that's how I regenerate, and just take some time. So yeah, but you're right. It can be, and I've learned over the years to notice when I'm going into depression, because I've been through that a couple of times. And so it's almost like you can notice when your heart's energy is getting depleted, and you kind of interrupt that downward spiral and say, okay, I got to recharge my batteries, because this is not going to end well unless I do. And so, yeah, that's my signal for getting out of the bush and just closing off stimulus and just being still for a bit. I wish I could say I meditated. That would be wonderful, but I'm terrible at that. I try, but I can't say I'm very good at it. So I really appreciate those who can.
I'm glad you are honestly sharing things, and I'm get to learn so much from you. Tell me more about, at this moment, I know there are so many things which are going on, but people like you, and I think many others I know, always feel that sense of gratefulness. So what are you most grateful for right now in this moment?
Oh gosh, that's easy. I'm super grateful for the little living space I just found, where I actually have a space to be, a base of operation. And I'm also super grateful for everyone that opened their doors to me in the 9 years that I've been nomadic. I've been working out of my car, and it's kept going, so I'm grateful to it as well. It's still running, but there's been so many people that have had me stay there with them for months at a time, and I'd be working away and really working hard to get things going, and nothing would come from it, and it became a massive leap of faith on their part to continue to think that whatever I was doing was going to actually show up at some point. And I've lost some people along the way. So, that's their decision. There's not much I can do about that, but I'm certainly grateful for having a space. And I'm right next door to a creek and some trees. So I just have to look left and it's very peaceful. And so I can go away and be in intense cities. I mean, there's one just down the hill, but I also have a place where I can come back to and be still for a bit. But I mean, honestly, I get so excited when I think about what we can do when we work together and internationally. I get super excited by that. My daughter and I have developed an even better, deeper relationship now. So that's invaluable. It's just really precious for me.
You just mentioned it about something around relationships. What does friendship means to you in your life, and who do you call as true friends?
Friendship for me is something that, it's about being there for people and unconditionally and without judgment. And I've got several who have been able to do that. And also see, like the joke is when you lose your status in society as someone who's got the big car and the big home and blah, 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 all that stuff that people think is super important. You've got people that just say, hey, I appreciate you for who you are. It's like, wow, okay. So you'll hear the people that say, wow, you're a real leader. And then the next breath, you'll hear someone that says, well, what's the matter with you? How come you haven't done this, this, and this? And so you've got these two, same person, same situation, and two very different perspectives on it. And it's sort of like, I'm going to choose the positive one because I can thrive off of that. but I'm going to die if, I had one person say to me, like, aren't you depressed? Shouldn't you? You should be depressed. And I thought, how's that going to help? What good will that do? Exactly. And it's because that's what they would do under similar conditions. So friends to me are the people that just show up and they're unconditional, and I've had so many people just trust, and they really had no reason to, but they did. And so I appreciated that.
Well, a lot of experiences speaks. Do you also believe in like some sort of magic that when you meet someone, you just know it, that you exchange the energies of that person, and so yeah, is there any time have you felt that kind of a magic?
Yes, I don't talk about this in business circles much, but I am an empath.
High five! Me too.
So the answer is yes, definitely. It's a blessing and a curse. The curse part is that you pick up other people's negative energies, you absorb their stuff, and you have to really get good at, which I have now become over the years, really good at clearing those energies and keeping clean so that you can actually be useful. So it's you automatically connect with people. You can see people at a soul level. When I used to work with youth, I would say, this kid's not going to stick with this program. And they'd say, oh, no, he's really in there. He's really in there. He's committed. And a week later, he would have taken the money and run. And they say, how did you know? It's written loud and clear. So to someone like yourself or myself, that sensitivity is a massive integrity detection device.
This is so great to know that. Doing this, all of this, there are also mistakes that we see often people repeat, but there are mistakes we often repeat. So what are those common mistakes? At least one, I'm sure, you keep repeating and repeating. And if you have to change, what would that be?
Oh, great. Well, I've been sort of systematically getting rid of that kind of stuff because it's debilitating. I have trouble saying no. So if somebody needs help, I'll drop everything, and I'll often give them things I need just to make sure they're okay. So that's something that I've kind of been a little bit more thoughtful about and say, I actually need this, so I'm not going to give it away. Because I'd give it away and then go and figure out how to either live without it or figure out how to get it again. The overgiving, I guess, would be the pattern. And I'm learning now to be more, because this 9 years of living nomadically kind of forces you to receive. You kind of have to be okay with that happening. And that's it's much more dynamic that way. I think the other part of it is that if there's one thing people say a lot about me now, it's that they feel my power. And I think that's really interesting because I was afraid of it for years. But then I learned that people beat you up, through judgment, whether you're powerful or not. And so you might as well own it, because it's almost like you get rid of anybody that's trying to prey on the weak. They just don't show up. Or if they do, they are very careful about how they tread around you. So when I say that, I don't mean that in a it's just done naturally. There's nothing, there's no ego in it. It's just a natural part of your being that you're connected to who you are, and that you're stronger through the adversity you've faced. You've risen above, you've transcended the judgment, you've transcended a lot of the stuff that would take you into a depressed state. And so it's, if there's sometimes you get emotional triggers that kind of remind you of that old state that you were in, and like, okay, I don't want to be there. I don't need to be around that sort of person who's busy distrusting, and they want you to take their fear and carry it for them. Yep, done with those. But it doesn't mean they don't show up. And certainly in the work setting, I have no problem with that. But in my personal life, I'm very careful about that. I don't have to work hard at that. People with a lot of fear usually get scared of me and don't show up. So, and that's nothing I do. I don't have to say a thing. They're afraid of something they can't put a finger on. And so they just don't show up. But patterns are still you're always paying attention to what am I doing again that I don't want to be doing again, and then getting to the root of it and clearing it out, moving forward. So that energetic clearing part is really important. Otherwise, you just end up back in the same place.
Thanks for sharing this. I think you've been very, very open about sharing a lot of personal things and about yourself. I think the last question for today, which I would like to ask to you is, are you happily living your life purpose, or are you still searching for it?
Oh no, I was clear about my life purpose from the moment I saw that rollback, and that would have been in 2002. And I think there's always a part of you that unconsciously knows what it is. In fact, I think that's true for everybody. It's just getting it to the point where you can see it. And so when I was in that organizational setting and just feeling not at peace with how the world was, the trajectory that we were on as a civilization, I was thinking, oh man, something's got to change here. And so the second that happened, I knew that I had to commit myself to that purpose. And if you don't have that, you definitely can't rise above adversity, because you don't see why you would. Why should you? You would become a victim otherwise. Or you would say, well, I'm a survivor, which is better than being a victim. But, in a victim state, you just kick back and you go, okay, there's nothing I can do. When you know what your purpose is, or when you know you can contribute, you don't even have to be clear about your purpose. Just know you can contribute. Then you're going to stand up. And when you stand up, you can get through anything. The minute you lie down and go to sleep, well, you'll get left behind. But it's really about standing up and being aligned with what matters to you most.
Thank you so much, Dawna, for sharing this beautiful inspiration this today with me. And I think I'm supercharged and very, very inspired. And I look forward to know more of you and the experiences you had in life. And so thank you.
As I mentioned, you'll be listening to a program with Anurag in the next episode, so stay tuned for that. Meanwhile, if you'd like to reach out to me, you can do so on LinkedIn or on Twitter at EPDAWNA_Jones, or on Facebook at From Insight to Action. And I think that's probably about it. So thanks very much. We've got a book coming out this week called From Hierarchy to High Performance. It's a co-authorship with 6 other authors, myself, and then myself as well. And that's being released on August the 14th, so coming up very soon. Thanks again for all your support. Please share and spread the word if this program is of value to you. I'd appreciate knowing.